And the one thing you can remember about me is that I'm from a country that doesn't exist anymore. Thankfully, it was East Germany. And I work in student and alumni engagement at Esada Business School.
Hi, I'm also Francisca, and also you can call me Fran, the same. I told you before, I'm from Chile. My background is I'm an engineer. I work with different organizations, and maybe the thing that I would like you to remember me is that I love to build bridges between different professional backgrounds. I love to work with different kind of professional people, and I love to work together to co-create different solutions. Nice to meet you.
So I'll go. Hello, my name is Caroline. I am based in Paris. I'm French-American culture. I lived in several different countries in the Middle East and Africa and the US and Europe. And I greatly believe in the power of networks. So you see behind me, indeed, I'm the middle link. I manage 2 different networks in the space of healthcare investment, but the power of network is true also in the private volunteering world or professional world. So yeah, thank you.
Come on, jump in. Dennis and Eva, who goes first?
I'll go ahead. I'm Dennis, and I am in Chicago, and I am here because I have taken a course in my graduate program about leveraging networks, and was invited to partake in this, and have discovered a lot of things about networks that I did not know, and how to reinvigorate my own network and try to make it worthwhile. So that's why I'm here.
Fantastic.
Sorry, I was mute. I was trying to speak, but I was mute. This is Eva Bucti. I'm also from Barcelona. So it seems that we are majority coming from Spain, or with some relationship with Spain. I'm as a degree, I'm engineer, but I'm working as consultant, strategic and financial consultant, working in the infrastructure and the service industry. Thank you.
Super. And we have the last person, Honorata. We don't see you. And if you want to introduce yourself, this is the last moment.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Honorata Dudek-Frysiak. I am from Wrocław. This is in Poland. I am the head of the International Cooperation Office at the private university, which specialization is logistics. So I'm very happy to join the network, and I really interested in how it's run, especially using the internet. There is extremely new for me. So welcome everybody.
Fantastic. So let's start. People utilize networks to different ends, because through networks, we actually, as talented people as we are, we can get 6 types of, let's call it support. And I will tell you the first 3, and I would like you to think about the other 3. So the first one, which is not that obvious, is a sense of identity. We live in a world which made things really complicated for us, because before, in the previous generation, we defined ourselves through a school that we graduated, for example, a family that we were coming from, a professional circle that we were working with, or certain social networks that we belonged to. Today, the sense of identity is much more tricky, because in a way, we have an opportunity and a right to define ourselves. And we define it through participation, connection, interaction with different type of networks, with different communities, and with certain people in these communities. So actually, when we're thinking strategically about network intelligence, that is our capacity to utilize the networks in an intelligent way, one aspect is to define ourselves and get this strength. that we know who we are uniquely. Now, we can connect actually with anyone we want in the world today. It's not a question of access. So one thing which is important is really to connect in a strategic way with the right communities, because in a way, either they will undermine your power of understanding what is your purpose, what is important for you, or, and I will ask, I think someone has needs to mute the phone, the mic, or they will be, or they will weaken you, because you will start to lose this sense, this North Star, what is really important and why you're socializing with people around you, physically or digital. The second support you can get from network is very tricky one, and I would call it, it's an innovation ecosystem. We live in a world where actually there is such a big capacity for mobility. We can change our future, we can change the education, we can change the way we work. So it's really this innovation capacities is augmented or not, depending on our environment. So again, if we strategically connect with the right networks, they can become nurturing environments for us to try new things, to dare to try, to fail safely, but have a support net that will help you get up and try again. So another dimension that you can look into how you shape your ecosystem is by looking at innovation with your personal life, with your professional life, or with your team and organization. The third element is about the daily support. Sometimes when we say network, we think, oh, this is this big LinkedIn followership that we have out there. But this is actually true only partially, because the network, as Caroline has in this great icon behind her, is actually, look at the difference between the strength of the two ties. What is there is that in some instances, we call them strong ties, and in other weak ties. The strong ties are basically defined by the level of trust, and the trust comes with the intensity and frequency and authenticity of communication, right? So the more you communicate with people at work, for example, the more you become, the more trusted you become towards them and they towards you, because simply you will be better feeling more comfortable by engaging and understanding what you can expect. The less you communicate, well, for example, with people on LinkedIn, you will very vaguely know what they do and how you can count on their help, or to what level you can really disclose certain information. So the third element that you can get from your network is this daily support. It's important to understand with whom you most frequently communicate, because this is actually one of the key elements for your success. Your closest ties, your strongest ties are the opener to the world. Now, I gave you 3 reasons or 3 types of support you can get from your network. Number 1 was a sense of identity. Number 2 was just daily support. And number 3 was this innovation ecosystem to try new things, fail and try again. And I want you to give me 3 more types of support you can get from your network. I give you just a second to reflect.
Opportunities.
Exactly. Caroline is right. And research shows that actually, if you do not have a right balance between strong and weak ties, most likely you will have very limited access to opportunities. Because if you have a network that is highly dense, so everyone knows everyone else, it's very hard to know what is going out in the outside world. This is why when we speak about network strategy, you need to think, to what extent I need to dedicate some time to communicate and network with people who are quite different than I am, and quite different than those with whom I spend most of my professional time, because this is where the opportunity can come. Absolutely, Caroline, you're right. How about 2 more things?
Expertise?
Yeah. Sure, Kimberly, absolutely. You can get, let's imagine that you're working on something very specific, And if you have the right network, then you can reach out to this network and quite quickly get the missing piece of information, just as a missing puzzle, to create a more complex solution, or to simply understand what is upcoming, to get some specific insight. Absolutely. So you get access to knowledge and information. What is the last one?
Could it be diversity of points of view?
Absolutely. This is part of this. I would say that this is partly part of the knowledge and information, right? Because if we cannot frame a piece of information in the proper way, if we see the world only through one lenses, one angle, then probably we have an information, but we cannot interpret it in the right way. This is why getting the information, it's not only access to what's going on, but also access to people who will allow you to interpret by framing and reframing the piece of knowledge, piece of information. Any idea for the last thing? Last type of support? Okay, let me then tell you, it's a political support. It's a political support. And what I mean by political support is that if you have a vision, or if you are in a transition, or if you have this new toy, a piece of technology that you would like to commercialize, or if you simply would like to change your life. Now, most likely, even if you have access to the opportunity, even you have access to the daily support, access to information, even if you really strongly understand why you're doing what you're doing, somewhere on the way, you will probably need support of very important people. And this is what I call the political support. So part of your network strategy, how you're thinking of building your ecosystem, is to understand who are those people that will be, let's call them the right people, who will know about what you do, who will trust you, who will be informed about your developments, and to whom at certain point, when the time comes, you can go out and ask for help. So here we have 6 different reasons how your networks can support you. And if you allow me, I will share my presentation. I had prepared just very few slides, but I think it may be interesting to have the visual. So what you see on the left of the screen, can you see my screen?
No, right now it's just black. We saw it at the beginning, when you opened that.
Good that I asked.
Yeah.
So I believe
yes, we see.
Oh, yes, we can see.
Okay. So I guess that we need to go with this view. So what you see on the left is a visual story of a lecture, of a keynote I gave some time ago in Barcelona at the Smart City Expo. And I was making the point that whether you want to change your professional future as an individual, or whether you want to change a metropolitan region such as Barcelona, you need to have people who will know how to work together across different silos, barriers, disciplines, generations, just people who can build those bridges. As one of you said, that Clara, was it you that we were to remember you for building the bridges, or was it Fran? I cannot remember, but one of the two of you, right? Fran, okay. Now, when you look at this picture, in a way, it seems complex. So let's kind of deconstruct it in a few moments. So first of all, I will explain what is network intelligence, then explain how we assess the network IQ skills, focus on the network strategy skill. We'll talk a little bit about the purpose network fit, and then there will be some tip about networking ourselves. But I saw that you're very network savvy and the LinkedIn profiles are in the chat. So in the book I wrote, Innovation Entrepreneurship, I researched how in different parts of the world, people transform their lives, but also transform their companies and transform the regions or the cities that they're based in. And I traveled to North America, South America, China, and over 20 countries in Europe. And I discovered that actually, Silicon Valley cannot be copied, but certain places got transformed and many companies got transformed. And what was common in this story of transformation was that people needed to have a little bit of four things. People needed to have some knowledge, can be technology, does not need to be cutting edge, but they had to be at least competent enough to use the available technologies. Now, they also needed to have access to to smart people. It was very important that there is a supply in their networks of people who are thinking differently and people with broad horizons. Then they needed to have contact to large companies. And this was because large companies have enormous market power. And in a way, when we're speaking about political support, we probably should think that if we want to innovate, if we want our transform our career or transform our professional project, we need to be connected with those big organizations one way or another. And the fourth element that they needed to have was some kind of entrepreneurial culture, spirit, and skills. So if you combine the four, then basically all you need is a purpose that I define in a very simple term. Purpose is something that simply keeps you keep trying. As someone told me, Daria, you just keeping up. And sometimes it's very hard to name the purpose. And many companies have this very elaborate mission that they want to serve their customers best, or that they want to transform the world, or that they want to be the first in the industry. But quite often when you talk with senior leaders in this organization or with those who were just onboarded, you realize that this mission is empty. And quite often people would express it in a different way. But we will come to this thinking about our purpose in a moment. But then in the book, I put forward the hypothesis that if you have these four elements, and if you have a purpose that is bigger than yourself, for example, you care about climate, you care about the future society, inclusion, fairness, or you just want to save the planet through sustainable energy, then it's about ability to network people, build those strong and weak ties, and orchestrate different projects across the ecosystem. However complicated or simple it sounds, it is really the blueprint for transforming at different level the future. And over the last year, we've been working with many different organizations trying to help them embrace this thinking. Now, you can say networking is actually simple because we just go to LinkedIn and we network. Now, I would say that it depends how you think about networking. If you think that networking is exchanging business cards, that's fine. But what we're talking here about is really networking with a certain vision, certain purpose. And if you think strategically, what helps you build those strong and weak ties, and what helps you get all these 6 types of resources and support that we discussed before, our research shows that you need 7 skills, and we call them these skills the Network IQ Digital Competency Model. So today we will focus on the network strategy skill. Now, for those of you who have taken the Network IQ Skills Assessment, you probably got the report with scoring. And quite often it is the case that people score very low on network strategy. And this is actually one of the core skills. So what does this mean, network strategy? It basically means 3 things. Number 1, that you understand who you are and what is your purpose. Number 2, that you're able to map the key communities that you belong to. You can think about these key communities as your ecosystem. And number 3, that you know who are the right people in these key communities that are aligned or that can give you this 6 type of assets, resources, support to achieve your purpose. Now, how would we think about mapping the ecosystem? You know, the networks are so complicated, and they're actually, the funny thing is that they change all the time. So whatever you put on paper, it is not true a moment later, because people build more trust with someone else, or people lose trust with you. And however, when we work as professionals, we tend to think in terms of organizational charts, right? Who reports to whom? We think in terms of a pyramid, or we think in terms of a matrix, but actually today organizations are portfolio of projects. And really the structure of any organization is the structure of a social network. So if you want to understand your ecosystem, your connections, I believe that the good way is to start with who has a similar goal as you do. Now, most instinctive way to do it is to think who I know. So people take a shortcut, but actually when they take a shortcut, what is the result is that those who take a shortcut and think, hey, I want to sell products and services, and this is actually one of the most frequent way why people utilize networks, less than 50%, 45% say that they are effective because they took the shortcut. Now, if they say hey, I want to share resources, our research shows that quite surprisingly, people do not really utilize often networking to share resources. And we live in the digital age where actually we don't need much of anything to make progress. We just need access to other resources. But people don't think that sharing is actually the way to grow, the way to transform. And those who share, the graph shows, our research shows that actually less than 10% knows how to share skills, how to share human resources. And I believe that sharing skills, being able to give others what you can give and take from others what you can take, is absolutely critical. Now, the third element I wanted to point to is about disrupting and monitoring business change. And here, there are very few people who utilize it frequently, but those who do, who utilize their networks to monitor what's going on, are declared that they are extremely effective. Now, so let me tell you the following thing. I will stop sharing my screen for a moment and would like to engage with you a bit more with the conversation. I would like you to tell me an issue, a problem, or an opportunity and a success that you had when you were trying to utilize your networks to get some kind of support. Can be either to sell or to share or to monitor what's going on in your ecosystem. So just think of a story where you are trying to sell something, and sometimes selling does not mean that you have a product and want to sell, or that you're a salesperson. Selling sometimes can be convincing your colleagues to your idea. So in a way, you're selling your idea, the way you think, right? Or that you are trying to share, can think about, exchanging part of your skills for other people helping you out, or can be this element that I always admire so much about this disruptive DNA, people who are mavens, who can utilize their networks to know what's going out there and what is upcoming. So think about those three moments where you are trying to utilize your networks, and tell me what difficulties you found.
I have one, but it's a happy story. It's not a. It's a happy story. When I was in South Africa, I wanted to put my networking passion to good use. And on one side, there was an orphanage, and on the other side, there was the whole community of French expatriates in Cape Town. And obviously, there was a need to connect the two, and especially for the older orphans that were 20, ready to go into the professional world, and that, unlike our kids, had no support, professional support. So I went out to the French community, tried to find the professional support for, like, professional godfathers to help these older orphans. And thanks to this, there was a young orphan whose dream and passion was to become a chef. And because of this networking, he was able to find an internship in one of the best hotels in Cape Town. And he did so well that he was taken on for their 4-year program. And now he's a full-time chef in Africa and living his passion. So that was a happy story of networking.
Caroline, a question. Which was the key, the critical, in every story, and I love children's story, there is a turning point. Usually someone comes, can be, a bad witch or a knight on a white horse, right? But someone shows up and then story turns around. Can you think, what was this moment where?
Well, I think the important thing of making the networking successful for whatever endeavor you're out is understanding what people want and what they're looking for, even if they don't know that they're looking for it. What I understood is that expatriate communities in various parts of the world would like to help the less fortunate, but don't know how. And so it's just a question of finding them and saying, would you mind putting your expertise and your knowledge to good use? And because they were thrilled to be able to, because I understood that they wanted to help but didn't know how, then they were more than happy to help. So it was seamless, I have to say.
Well, it was seamless only when you think backwards. But look how many, thinking forward, how many opportunities like this could turn the future of people if only there were more people like you who spotted an opportunity and could connect the people in this ecosystem to actually make something happen, right? So to share their knowledge and I'm sure from my experience building networks, building communities, mentoring others, is that actually as a mentor, you get maybe even more than a person who's mentored. So I believe that this relationship was mutually beneficial, not only for the orphans, but also the other person who opened the door.
Absolutely. And even for me, because,
what did you get out? What was there for you?
I think, well, for me, the big difference is I have the feeling that I truly changed his life by just bringing people together, and it was very easy. But he went from the status of one of the many orphans to being now a chef, working his passion and being able to change what his family, when he will have kids, the whole story of his family will change because of that. So I think it's powerful.
Powerful. Thanks, Caroline, for sharing.
You're welcome.
I love the stories of, of success, but maybe you have some stories where you observed in your ecosystem where people were trying to share, to disrupt the system, or to maybe sell their ideas or sell product services, and this didn't work.
Well, I want to rise, and I don't know, it's not a concrete case, but it's like a situation. I did a bit the opposite side of what Caroline was saying. It's okay. I think for me, for everybody, it's easy to give, to help. But what is, at least for me, more difficult is to request, or when somebody is requesting you to do something. So, and which is the point where you are too aggressive, or how to do it. I need, for instance, something from Kimberly, or Kimberly is asking something from me. Which is the point? That we are not very familiar, we are not close friends, but I need something from her, or she needs something from me. So, which is the point of this?
So, Eva, you're asking, the question is how to ask for something to people in your network.
Yeah, what is the limit from aggressive, or like in a professional world, or all of us need something from somebody. So we are used to these situations, but it's difficult sometimes to ask when, and it's more easy to give sometimes.
Eva, in a way, you're asking how to sell something, because asking for something, in a way, you want something in return, right? So there is an element of transaction. right? When you're asking, you're really selling your request, hoping that someone will buy it from you, right?
Yeah, that is.
So I can give my comment and my expert view, but maybe someone else would like to comment first.
I just have a thought about it. It's like just random, like, but because I was thinking that I would have a similar problem. I completely understand that. What, you know, when do you ask how much? How do you calibrate what cannot? Where's the threshold, and so and so. And I was wondering if there is something about that which is maybe more cultural, that you feel that, you know, you need to be able to answer things, but if you ask, it shows like a lack of something. So for example, in service design and design research, it's all about asking, but it's not even transactional. You could think about it as mutuality, right? You don't have to think that it needs to be transactional. There could be a give and take, or there might just be a give or a take. And the transaction may happen somewhere else in the network, right? Like it's not between those two nodes. So I don't know, it's just a thought. I don't know what is the answer, because I also find that quite difficult, but it's almost like an ongoing process to kind of allow yourself to be more vulnerable and to ask for things, and how to do it in a way that could indicate maybe reciprocity, or entice them to, as you're selling, it's like selling, entice them to want to answer your ask.
If I may just say, I think you're right, Claire. I think it's very cultural, because having been raised in the US, it's pretty natural to just go out and sell. You know, you sell from when you're a little girl with Girl Scout cookies, so it's not an issue. But when you're asking for help, or I've always been taught to give people space to say no. You have to leave a door open so that they're not cornered and they feel that really embarrassed about saying no. And that's when you put them in a difficult position. So you should never put someone in a difficult position. You should always give them space to say no. And the first step of asking it for advice, everybody's ready to give advice. They might not want to give contacts. They might not want to give you money. They might not want to, but advice, everybody will give you advice. So start by asking advice and give them space to say no if they don't want to. That usually helps.
Thanks for this insight, Caroline. Indeed, it's very culturally contextual. It's gender contextual. It's age contextual. There are many elements to this, but maybe someone else wants to comment. How to ask for something? How to sell whatever you want to someone to buy from you?
I like Clara's point on the vulnerability. I think it helps, I think, in building trust. So if you're I see it as to build trust in relationships. So if you need help, or you're building a relationship, or even a friendship, that when you expose a vulnerability, the natural reciprocation is the other person shares the vulnerability. And I think for me, that's the foundation of trust and building those relationships. And culturally, I might be, I don't know what I would be more uncomfortable in terms of selling something than asking for help, actually. So that's where I would be, and I would not that's not my strength.
Okay, the last comment before we move ahead. Ricardo, Francis, do you want to comment from your point of view?
Yeah, I would love to comment shortly and briefly. I think asking for help or advice starts with showing interest in the other person's activities and maybe personality. I do make a clear distinction about personality and character. So I think personality is more job related. It's like you're playing a role and you have the skills to play that role. And character is more interpersonal, let's say, more human skills, which we all have in our DNA. So it's normal to ask questions, I guess. It depends on the situation, environment, and I think the timing, whether the other person really wants to answer your question or not. So what I do is, and it really helps me, is I also call it working out loud. It's like whatever I need, I just shout it out into my environment like a Wi-Fi point. Like everybody can join on that Wi-Fi spot, and whoever picks it up answers or not. And but what I also do is I try to show interest in that other person first, and that helps.
Super. Thank you, Ricardo, for these insights. So you're crowdsourcing.
Yeah, actually I am.
Fantastic. Francis, did you want to comment?
Yeah, it is the age-old saying that ask, you will receive.
Okay, absolutely. Ask and you will receive. Maybe not from this person, maybe not now, but if you are persistent in asking, you will receive. So, you know, I'm not sure how it is in your cultures, but I had recently a very unique experience in Barcelona. Was before pandemic. I went for a class of Argentinian tango, and I've never danced tango before, and I didn't really know what to expect. But this was really a good lesson in asking, because for those of you who do not know tango, let me just tell you that the setup is that women sit around a dancing hall, and they're not allowed to go out and ask someone, a man, to dance. So the ritual is that a man picks up a woman, goes to her at a certain distance, never closer, with invisible gesture. This woman gives a signal if it's interested or not to dance. He picks up the signal immediately, and if this is a no, in a noble way, moves away and goes to another woman. Okay, for me it was really a culture shock, thinking that you know, that you have such rigid roles assigned to you because of a gender and because of a code in a culture. But I think that we can draw some lessons from this, because in a way, in every culture, there is a different code of asking for something, and it can be that in an IT culture, it's a very different way of asking. And maybe Ricardo, you're just, you know, a crowdsourcing guy working in tech industry, and you know, you just who's ever happy to help now, welcome on board. If not, we move on anyway. Or maybe you're coming from much more rigid university culture or government culture, when it's really not, you don't even think that you have a right to go up to a very senior colleague, maybe a famous professor or a senior government official, and directly talk with this person, not even to ask for some opportunity to get promoted or to get a piece of advice. So it is very cultural. And I think that the first step of thinking is just to recognize that we get some heat, emotions when we are to ask for something, and this is okay. And this is okay for other people to say no, and it is okay for us to understand that maybe this is not the right moment, or not the right person, or not the right request that we should ask. So whenever we can withhold our emotions just for a short moment, and when we do the network IQ development programs, I really love this moment. We have a structured process when people trying to understand what they want really to ask for. So first, you need to understand, you know, why are you asking for it, right? If this causes some emotional hurdle, right, this means that it costs you something, that there is, you know, maybe a creative vibe and you love it, but maybe there's also anxiety and you don't necessarily like it. So it's really when you sit down and put down in writing what is important for you, what is that you want to achieve, and what you need, what kind of piece of knowledge, maybe funding, or maybe help, skills, and so on you need. When you map this out, things become much more calmer. And this is the first step. Then the second step, the way we do it, is to help a team or individuals understand where they are associating with, and this is quite simple, if you look at your time, how you dedicate your time, but not when you don't think about people with whom you spend time, but if you were to map over the last 2 weeks, and I would love if you just took a pen and wrote down, if you can write it down, the key communities that you socialize, that you spend your time with over the last 2 weeks. For sure, it will be your work, your organizations that you work with, right? So your team, for sure, this will be one. But think of, maybe a few others. Maybe you're taking Catalan classes, and this is your community that you're socializing right now with, right? Maybe you just joined a new LinkedIn group and you're seeing what's going out there. But just think in terms of time, your time investment, and just write down these communities. So in these communities, most likely you cannot socialize with all people, and by hazard, by chance, you're socializing with some people. But if you put some analytical thinking into this, in this system thinking, because really what we're doing, we're kind of trying to deconstruct a system that you surround yourself with consciously or unconsciously, but this is your ecosystem. So if you were to identify the people who actually could give you this bit of missing help that you need, right? So most likely this will not be the people with whom you spend most time with in this community, because if this was the case, most likely that they would already give it to you before, right? So it means that in these communities, probably there are some other people that you want to reach out to. And what we do working with a team, we understand that it's not about me knowing a person and going to ask for help. It's really building this itinerary in the ecosystem of who will ask for me for this help in the right moment. And then the last part of this exercise, which I believe is maybe the most important, is how will I say thank you if I receive it? How will I say thank you if I receive it? And I believe that Eva and Clara, when you think in this way about giving back something in return, saying thank you can be intangible, can be emotional, can be very tangible, can be a book or something very concrete. But when you think hypothetically, how would I thank this person who helped me get what I needed? Maybe introduced me to the right person. Maybe this right person gave me a piece of advice. How will I say thank you? And in this moment, the emotions are equalized, because you're not in a position where you're trying to get something. You're in a position that you're trying to give something. And I think Caroline and then Kim was saying that if you want to give something, you're empowered because you have it, right? So listen, this is how we play with teams, and I love people thinking systems, and I love people, let me share my screen, and I love people feeling empowered that actually they always have something to give, even if they don't think, or even if they think that they really need something. So we made this little networking effectiveness exercise. And before we close today's webinar, let me just talk about LinkedIn. And you know that I love LinkedIn for a number of different reasons. And with Evelina, we just learned this week that LinkedIn gave me the right for live broadcasting. So maybe we can be meeting more often, just on live, just for a chat or for a lecture. Or for an interview on LinkedIn Live. But let me show you, this is an authentic analytics from LinkedIn. This is my profile, where between end of December and March, so just two months, sorry, suddenly something happened on the number of people who viewed my profile. Now, I want you to put a little bit of thinking. What could have happened on LinkedIn in my profile or in your profile that suddenly attracts so much more attention? And I always ask questions and ask people to think before I give answers, because I'm not the smartest person in the world. I believe that collectively, as a network, we are the smartest. So what could happen in my LinkedIn network?
That you share a comment, like a paragraph in your story, in your profile, maybe.
This is correct, Fran. This is correct. I shared something on LinkedIn. So what could it be that I shared on LinkedIn that suddenly caught so much more attention than usual?
Maybe it was something that helped people learn something about themselves, or so it wasn't just a broadcast, it was something that made them reflect, learn something new, feel that there is something in it for them.
Can you give an example?
I'm just trying to think of one, but I don't know, maybe it was your assessment tool or something that helped them sort of realize and learn something new about themselves.
Okay,
about
Clara,
the environment.
so this was not the case, but nice try.
A joint activity, so something that's linked up with other people on your LinkedIn network so that it garnered views from your own network plus views or engagement from other people's networks, sort of by cross-posting.
Can you give an example, Kim?
Potentially a joint article, a joint event, and maybe an article that you've written for a third party. So it's also published in their wider network and resharing it. Something.
Kim, I did not tag any single person. Nice try, but could be possible, could be absolutely possible. And Clara is right. If there is a timely issue and you give a relevant answer, then a post can become viral, and then you get much more visibility. And Kim is right that if you tag an influencer, and this influencer gives you a like, so the algorithm make the post visible in their network, and suddenly you get much more reach and exposure. But this was not the case. The last try before we go on.
You created a group?
No. Why am I sharing this story? Because I think that we live in the world that every single human activity is connected to a digital network. And we should never underestimate the power of every single individual to be connected to the digital network. And the network has its own rituals, has its own hypes, has its own networking dynamics. And I don't usually publish personal posts. I'm rather on a professional side. I don't feel very well, exposing my personal life or showing off, if you know what I mean. But this was the International Women's Day on March 8th, and I just kind of felt that I should say something openly, and I wrote a manifesto. I wrote, what does this mean for me to be a woman? We all live very complex. We have all very complex identities. It's not easy to be a woman or to be a man today when we juggle so many roles, when we face so much uncertainty. But sometimes when you openly say what's on your mind, what bothers you, what hopes and dreams you have, what you're proud of, suddenly this resonates with many other people out there who feel the sense of the same emotions and the same aspirations. So when we speak about network strategy, there can be a very analytical, systematic process that I briefly described to you, how we're building the purpose network fit, working with teams and organizations or individuals. But I can also tell you that there's a big power in authentically communicating who you are, and in a way doing what it takes, what Ricardo said, just crowdsourcing, the like-minded people out there and expanding your network. So we're coming to the very end of this webinar. I want to encourage you to always start with defining your purpose, not your mission. Don't use big words. Just be clear. What makes you tick? I want to thank you very warmly and very warmly thank my colleague Evelina, who, without whom this webinar would not have happened. Okay, any final comments?
Do you have any questions, comments? This is the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Daria.
Thank you very much, Daria. I think that's today I invite extreme knowledge for me. and I found a lot of interesting things, especially to one. One of them is some kind of assessment of my networking. I think it is very poor. So thank you very much, because it's important to me. Thank you very much.
Super, Honorata. Super. Okay, so I thank you as well, and I hope to see you next month, if not earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.